Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Episode 207, Sports Card Nation podcast. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. Hope it was a great one spent with family and friends, and you didn't eat too much turkey. I might put you to sleep without the tryptophan or whatever it's called that makes you tired. But all joking aside, hope Thanksgiving was well. Our Monday Hobby Quick Hits edition was me giving out a lot of thanks. Kind of want to keep that theme this week. But with today's Sports Card Nation, our interview guest is someone really making an impact at a third world country, very impoverished, one of the most poverty-stricken countries in the world, the Dominican Republic. My guest is Darren Garnick, and what he does with CardsFortheDR is he brings Dominican Republic players depicted on baseball cards down there or ships them there and gives them to the young boys and girls that are playing baseball. And again, they don't have card stores there. They don't have access like we do in most other places to acquire cards. And it's a great thing to expose, a great country to where a lot of our Major League Baseball players come from, get cards in the hands of those future Major League Baseball players, quite frankly. And when I heard about what he was doing, I said I have to have him on and talk about this. And we'd like you, to recruit some help. If you have some cards you want to donate to the cause, listen to the interview, and I'll have the credentials, Darren's credentials in the show notes. We can get those cards to the organization and get them down to the DR for those young kids to enjoy. And great guest, great conversation, and, keeping that Thanksgiving theme of good things and doing good deeds. I thought it was the perfect week to air this show. So without further ado, let's get this show started.
This is Sports Card Nation. Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Hey everyone, this is Alex here from Relics Cards and Collectibles in Toronto, representing the Relics squad. I just want to remind everyone, the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.
Like the athletes we admire, the Sports Card Shop is changing the game. We're not launching threes, bombing drives, or hitting dingers, but we have built a unique gathering spot for all collectors to trade cards, talk sports, play games, and watch their favorite athletes on the big screens. Yes, we've partnered with Panini, Upper Deck, Leaf, Topps, Fanatics, Pokemon, and others to bring you all the latest in sealed wax and singles. But the Sports Card Shop in New Buffalo, Michigan is much, much more. Our recent expansion brings collectible sneakers, Hot Wheels, and more sports and entertainment memorabilia into the mix. Our new Collector's Cave game room is the perfect place to throw a rip party, bring friends, rip packs, trade cards, play billiards, ping pong, shuffleboard, classic arcade, and Xbox games, all while watching your favorite sport on TV. Visit us at thesportscardshop.com. Follow us on social @_sportscardshop, or better yet, visit us in person to learn about special events, party packages, new products, and everything we're doing for you. The Sports Card Shop, connecting people, sports, and the hobby around the world.
All right, real happy to speak to the next guest on the Sports Card Shop at Moco guest line. This is Thanksgiving week. I hope, this is coming out on Friday. Thanksgiving was yesterday. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. But this is really the perfect week to have this gentleman on and talk about what he does and his group does. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Darren Garnick to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming on. And you're with Cards for the DR. For most baseball fans, when they hear DR, they generally know what that means. But just in case, that's the abbreviation for the Dominican Republic, where many baseball players in the major leagues and minor league come from. It's a hotbed. Baseball is huge there. But, Darren's organization brings a lot of those heroes that I just kind of mentioned, the cardboard and chrome, back to the Dominican Republic and gives them to the kids. And I'm sure it's a great thing. I when I knew you were coming on, Darren, I definitely I had heard about this, and then I even dug a little bit deeper. Before we get into Cards for the DR, and we're going to spend quite a bit of time with what you do with them, just kind of, it's a sports card show, kind of your hobby background, even maybe before, Cards for the DR.
Sure. So I'm a lifelong Red Sox fan and a child of the late 70s, early 80s, much like you. And I've collected everything I can get my hands on since then. And I have too many cards now. My basement's overflowing. My office closet's overflowing. And so giving away cards has been a blessing for me in terms of being able to walk around my house. What do I love? I love the Topps Heritage series because it brings me back to the 70s, and I really like that old-fashioned cardboard versus the glossy, shiny, glittery diamond stuff, right? With the hydrofoils and the 8,000 different variations of the rainbow. I'm not into any of that stuff. I just love the classic designs. I also grew up loving Topps non-sports cards, Star Wars cards I grew up on, and Happy Days cards and E.T. cards and everything you can imagine. And I used to put those stickers on my lunchbox and in my locker. And today, I love collecting the Topps Heritage stuff and also offbeat stuff. I really love food issued cards. I love the old round cards that were, distributed with Italian ice and ice cream and pizza and things like that. So I love offbeat stuff and anything Red Sox.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're gonna dislike me for saying this because and people who listen to the show on a regular basis know, like Topps Heritage, I get it and I appreciate what it is. It's one of my least favorite Topps brands. It's more of a set collector's release, which I don't do anymore, so it doesn't move that meter. But I think it has its great points. Some of you point out, which is why you love the product. It's just not one of my favorites, but sort of for op reasons. Sort of, I grew up sort of with that stuff like you did, and it's like I almost rather still go back and buy, the singles, the originals. But it is cool to see some of the current day players on those designs because obviously it wouldn't happen any other way. So I get it. It's just not my cup of tea, but nothing wrong with it. And listen, it's one of their most popular brands. So a lot of people probably fall on your side of the aisle than mine. And we both grew up, like you said, during that era. And I just think with the Heritage, I've sort of seen so many releases of it. It's sort of become like repetitive, but at the same time, it also brings back that nostalgia bug, right? You remember the original set when you look at whatever the current rendition is.
Stadium Club. I also love Stadium Club because I really appreciate the photography and the obscure archival photos. I was looking at a pack of the cards the other day, and they had a picture of Johnny Bench he's wearing his Reds uniform, but he's wearing a necktie, a loosely tied necktie around his neck, and he's carrying balloons. And I have no idea what the hell he's doing there, but it's great. Like, someone who works for Top Archives loves quirky stuff, and that's why I love that set.
Yeah, now we're waving the same pennant. Stadium Club is actually one of my favorite Topps releases for exactly what you just said. Some sort of rarer photos or photos not used in the traditional flagship releases. The photography is probably some of the best on cards in the history of cards, and you get those photos that make you think, right? That makes the gears in your mind turn. Like, what's going on here? What was the backstory with this photo? And some of the shots, taken from the dugout. Almost like with sitting in between players. And, one of my favorite cards, I think it's the 2020 Stadium Club. It's the Bo Bichette's rookie, and it's filmed from like inside the dugout looking up, and you see the CN Tower behind them. It's just a great card, a great shot. I love Stadium Club. So we're back on the same page with Stadium Club. Going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more from Darren Garnick.
Are you a new sports cards collector or someone returning to the hobby? Maybe you're just looking for a friendly, trustworthy hobby community to hang out with and enjoy collecting. Midwest Box Breaks has been bringing collectors together for many years with affordable breaks, helpful threads, and a Discord group packed with generous people who genuinely care about the hobby and other collectors. Check out the breaks at MidwestBoxBreaks.com. Our goal is to bring you as much value as possible. Also, find us on Twitter at MidwestBoxBreaks.
Hey folks, John here. Just wanted to remind you, use the discount code MBB10 for 10% off your first order at MidwestBoxBreaks.com. Welcome back. Here's more with Darren Garnick. Let's get into cards for the DR. It's a great what you're doing, Darren, for those young, boys and girls, and just kind of like where the idea, how it all came about. How was it launched? Where did it all start?
Yeah, let me start out by saying, while the Dominican Republic is one of the greatest exporters of Major League Baseball talent, just think about the past couple weeks. The AL Rookie of the Year, Julio Rodriguez, right? Then you have the World Series MVP, Jeremy Pena, and then you have the NL Cy Young Award winner, Sandy Alcantara, all from the DR. And so 1 out of every 10 players on MLB rosters is from the DR. And ironically, kids growing up there don't have baseball cards at all. In fact, many of them have never even heard of baseball cards or seen baseball cards. So what we do is we give them their first baseball cards. We, myself and my co-founder, Hugh Baver, who's based down in the Dominican Republic, he's a New Hampshire guy just like me, who just moved down there. We form relationships with different youth baseball leagues around the country, and we give away cards. We give away right now, we're giving away a few cards per kid just because of logistics. We put all the cards in top holders, and the reason is that when you're 8 or 9, you're brutal with cardboard. I mean, you'll just ruin it within seconds, right? Yeah. So these kids put the cards in their pockets. They're riding their bikes, So we encase it in bulletproof glass, basically. How did it get started? How much time do you have?
Well, we're not on a clock, but give if it's too long, give us like the Cliff Notes.
Sure. So it started in a very, very unusual way. I am a freelance journalist, and one of my magazines is New Hampshire Magazine, where I just write about interesting people, places, things like that. And I was writing about this guy, Hugh Baver, who quit his sales job at a software company and moved to the DR. And he was inspired by the Holocaust. During the Holocaust, during World War II, the Dominican Republic was one of the only countries that welcomed Jewish refugees from Hitler's Europe. And very few people know that. I wasn't really aware of that either. And Hugh moved to the Dominican Republic because he wanted to honor the people of the Dominican Republic, thanking them for rescuing Jewish people. And he has a goal of building a community center center in the town of Sosua on the North Coast to honor and recognize this historical achievement and act of humanity. Long story short, I'm Jewish as well, and I was really amazed by this story, and I wanted to help in some way. And I asked you, I said, while you're meeting all these new people down in the Dominican Republic, want some of my baseball cards, want to give out some of my Dominican players, because it's a great icebreaker, right? And he did. And I went through my collection and I pulled out like 500 Dominican players like Pedro Martinez, Manny Ramirez. You get the idea, all these stars. Yeah. And it just was a huge hit. People love the cards. Kids love the cards. And Hugh said, how can we get more of these cards? And so totally aside from the Jewish History Project that he's working on, this baseball card project just took on a life of its own. Yeah,
that's, everything starts right from a seed and then it just grows and it's like a ripple turning into a wave. I just learned something there myself, Darren. I appreciate you sharing that. I have Jewish heritage. I'm half Jewish, half Italian. Nice combo there from New York. So I had no idea until you mentioned it just now that they were a refuge for Jewish folks trying to escape. As we all know, World War II time, the Holocaust, and all that goes along with it. So I learned a little something there myself, which is awesome. And then you mentioned Hugh, wants to sort of pay that back or pay it forward, if you will, and acknowledge that generosity and that humanity, and that's cool. So now I know this much. The Dominican Republic is not, it's third world. People call it third world country. It's not, it's not a rich country necessarily. You hear some of the former players that came from the DR talk about how they had to make balls by hand, out of just everyday products and duct tape and no shoes and sharing gloves or making even gloves out of all sorts of different materials. So that gives you, for those out there listening that may not know, that gives you perspective of where they are. So, they can't even get sporting, baseball equipment. Baseball cards are going to be few and far between. I guess my question to you is, with a lot of the famous, players that have come from there, the fact I'm glad you and Hugh, have done this and are doing even more. You would have, how come some of the former players that wasn't something? I know they probably do other things and give money and build things, but you would think maybe the card, just because of the lineage and the heritage and some of the great players, that there would be more cards there. Do you know why that might be not the case?
Sure. So let me back up and say, underscore what you were saying is, I don't know what the latest rankings are, but I believe the Dominican Republic is one of the top 5 poorest countries in the world. Yep. And some of the kids are playing barefoot. And when I went down to the Dominican Republic this summer to hand out cards, it's a year-round project, but being able to do it in person is amazing. A lot of these families are living, large families are living in one room houses, and like I said, the kids don't have proper shoes and let alone gloves. There's this famous story of Tony Fernandez, the all-star shortstop for the Padres and Jays. He started out with a milk carton as his glove. So the question is why don't they have cards? I don't know, but my hunch would be that it's not economically profitable for the baseball card companies to sell the cards, because who's going to buy them when food is the priority, right? Or clothing is the priority. So it just doesn't seem to be economically viable. As far as baseball players who make it, being generous and supporting their community, it is kind of a disconnect, right? Like you'd say, okay, these players are making $30 million a year. Can't they take $1 million million and put it here and do A, B, and C. I think that actually is happening. Like Pedro Martinez built a school and a church, and I don't have the list of everything he did. I was just reading something about Nelson Cruz buying ambulances for his community. So I think some players do it and some players don't. It's like anything else, right? Like sometimes in our own lives, when we meet people, the most generous people are people who have no money at all. And sometimes the richest people we know, snub their nose at putting a quarter into the UNICEF box or whatever it is. I don't know the answer, but I do know that many baseball players give back to their hometown. And if you're one of those towns where there weren't many players, you're kind of screwed. And so it's a fascinating question.
You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast. We'll be right back after this break.
Introducing the only auction house dedicated exclusively to the cards of the 1990s. Josh Adams and John Linden have created an auction company solely for the rare, scarce, and hard-to-find inserts and parallels of the 1990s. Whether it be basketball, baseball, football, or hockey, 90s auctions will have it. Each auction will consist of smaller lots between 100 and 120 lots, so your cards won't get lost in the shuffle. Founded on the principles of fairness, honesty, and integrity, 90s Auction was created by collectors for collectors. Register and consign today at 90sauctions.com. That's 90 little s auctions.com.
We are back.
Right now, Cards for the DR is really a two-person organization. There's me here in the U.S. and Hugh down in the Dominican Republic. And we have a network of generous collectors around the U.S. and Canada who are sending us cards and top holders and are donating money to help with postage. But for the most part, Hugh and I can only do so much. And so I would love to scale up. And by scaling up, I would love to get Major League Baseball involved or minor league baseball involved. My local minor league team, the Fisher Cats, the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, which is the Blue Jays AA team, they just gave me like a pile of shirts that had the Fisher Cats in Spanish, and we just brought them down to the Dominican. But all those little things add up, and so if we can get large organizations like even like Topps or Fanatics or somebody like that involved, I would love to just become a contributor and fade in the background and help this cause, because there's so much that can be done. Hugh is trying to get meetings with the education ministry in the Dominican Republic to see if this program could be incorporated in the schools. Because if you think about it, if you look on the back of a baseball card, right, there's all these statistics. And so there's a lot of math involved, right? And also English is so important in the Dominican Republic because the economy down there is dependent on tourism. And so if you know English, you're going to get a better job. Yeah. And maybe that better job could be software development or whatever it is, but English is very valuable for careers down, worldwide. So that was a very, very long-winded answer to your simple question.
No, and it's very important. And you touch on something that's on my list here to talk to you about. Is you hit it right on the head, Darren. I'd like to see, like you said, Topps/Fanatic, Panini, even some of the supply companies, Ultra Pro.
Exactly.
They, get involved. Number one, it's a tax write-off for those companies, and they need those as much as anybody does. And it's just good to do things like that. Good to get in some communities. Listen, and the importance of the DR to what they're doing, Topps and Panini, and you can't measure that. Like you said, you got Hall of Fame baseball players that appear on their products. I mean, just to give back a little bit, it's really not going to break their bank. They're going to get a tax write-off. I mean, I guess I'll put you on the spot. Has anyone, I can kind of put some feelers out. I can tag them and, use what little emphasis, or pull I have. But has anybody, you or Hugh reached out maybe to, make them aware what you're doing? If they do want to get involved?
Of course. So my Instagram is at Baseball Cards for Good. And it's 4 as a numeral, Baseball Cards for Good. And so I'm always tagging Tops. I'm always tagging Fanatics and Beckett and all the publications. And so, hopefully something will stick. You just never know who's going to see something. Like, for example, on Instagram, there's this very popular site called the Bat Boys. And the Bat Boys are 2 college kids that go on the field at MLB stadiums and just ask fun questions to the players. They'll say, how much can you bench press? Or what's your favorite pop music song, or how far can you throw a baseball? Stuff like that. And they stumbled across Cards for the DR. And so they're now asking Dominican players what their memories are of baseball cards, if any, and what they think of this project. So word of mouth is so important. Just as an aside, one of the Bat Boys interviews on Instagram, they interviewed Juan Soto, and Juan Soto said that he had no baseball cards as a kid, but him and his dad would cut out pictures of baseball players in the newspaper and paste them in a book. And that was like a fun father-son activity, but that was their baseball cards, newsprint.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're talking about, Tony Fernandez making a glove out of an old milk carton, and here they're, the Juan Soto making basically a homemade baseball card. I got to ask you, you mentioned you went last year to the DR. Was that your first trip, or how many times have you been there?
Yeah, I'd never been there. We were there this past June. We were there. My friend Jay and I flew down there. We were there for 10 days. We went to 6 different communities, and we were going to places that are just off the tourist map. GPS can't even take you there. Just locals brought us there. Hugh has an amazing network of youth baseball coaches around the country, and I have to say, I gained so much. I already had enormous respect for the people of the Dominican Republic, but it was just wonderful to experience their warmth and also just see up front their talent and passion for baseball. Give you an idea, we were in this village outside of Monte Cristi, which is near the Haiti border in the west. And Monte Cristi is where Juan Marichal comes from and where Nelson Cruz comes from. And the baseball diamond is in the middle of the neighborhood. So picture, like in these New England towns, like you'll have a town common and then you'll have houses all around the town common. But picture a baseball field being that glue that brings the houses together. So people walk out their front door and there's a huge baseball field, and then houses around the perimeter. So we were on this baseball field and the kids are playing, and all of a sudden a herd of goats started to stampede across the field, and the kids didn't even look up. They just kept playing baseball because the goats are just, they're part of the background. But also seeing 16-year-old kids, hit a ball that would have easily gone out of Fenway.
Time for a quick break, but we'll be right back.
For nearly 50 years, Sports Collectors Digest has been the voice of the hobby, bringing you comprehensive coverage of the sports collectible industry. From industry news, auction results, market analysis, and in-depth stories about collectors and their collections, Sports Collectors Digest has everything you need to know about the hobby. SCD is also your leading source for listings of sports collectible dealers, card shops, card shows, and the latest from the industry's top companies. To check out all the latest news or to subscribe to the hobby's oldest magazine, visit sportscollectorsdigest.com or call 1-800-829-5561.
Thanks for sticking with us. Let's return to the show.
when we arrived in Monte Cristi with our car, we parked way out in the outfield. Like, we didn't think we were in any damage of getting the ball hitting our windshield or anything like that. But one of the coaches says, don't park there, move away. And needless to say, 5 minutes later, people were hitting it out like, 350 feet or whatever it was. And these are kids. It was awesome being in the DR. It really was. The only downside to the DR, the only negative I would say, is that the drivers, people drive like schmucks down there, worse than Boston, worse than New York, so much so that they put speed bumps on the highways. I'm not kidding you. Like the main thoroughfares, people have to stop every half mile for a speed bump because people they drive like it's the Indy 500 down there.
Yeah, interesting. Like you mentioned with the goats, and to those kids, like that was just an everyday occurrence. Play ball, and I got to ask you, when what are the kids' general reactions when they're getting these cards? Are they? I'm sure they're excited, but I mean, in other words, do you think what you're doing is going to catch on? In other words, they want more cards, or they're going to start collecting.
Look, I do. I took 5 years of high school Spanish, right? Like, one of the years was in 2 years of junior high equals 1 year of high school. And my Spanish is really bad. Muy malo or muy mal or however bad it is. And my one regret is not taking one of those Babbel courses to beef up my Spanish. And next year when I go, I will definitely beef up my Spanish. But the language of baseball is universal. And I didn't need to know Spanish to see the passion and excitement in these kids' eyes when we would give them 2 or 3 cards, not a box of cards to do a break or like a full set, just 3 or 4 cards in top holders. They treated it like it was gold. And one of the reasons why we know how excited they are is because Hugh and I would go to these baseball fields and we would hand out cards before the game, like we would watch them play a game. And an hour after we handed out the cards, we would see the kids pulling the cards out of their pockets still, reading the backs, trading them with each other, just mesmerized by them. Hugh gives out a lot of cards at Christmas time, and he told me that in some homes these cards are put up on the mantle above the fireplace. And it really makes me appreciate what I have, and also make me realize like I have too many cards, right? Like and I have many cards that I don't even look at. And that's one of the things that I think appeals to our fellow collectors is that, I mean, do you need 25 Pedro Martinez cards from 2004? Maybe you'd be happy with 5 of them. And just give the rest of them away. So yeah, I mean, these kids very much appreciate the cards, and that's why I really want this program to be scaled up.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power, Darren, and maybe contact some powers that be that I know. Definitely going to tag them with this episode and highlight what you're doing. And, it's great, too, that these kids can get some of their countrymen heroes on cardboard that they've never got to partake in before. But I'd even like to see Top, Fanatic, Panini even give some packs. So these, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you, before I even go into, do these kids follow, the current DR players in the major league? How do they do it from the DR? What are their methods to do that?
So if you walk around anywhere, Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, Dodgers, those hats are everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Padres as well, because of Machado and Tatis. The games are on TV. I don't know who syndicates them or anything like that. They read about it. They they see it on the internet. They obviously follow their hometown heroes, but they're also into the teams, and they know all the players. And I'll give you an example. After I handed out a box of cards in one of these towns, one of the kids came up to me and he saw I had like another 30 cards in my hand. He wanted to know if I had Chapman. I can't pronounce his first name. Aroldis Chapman, the Yankees closer that choked. Yep. He asked me if I had him, and I said no because he's from Cuba. But the kid didn't care. He wanted to trade me the card he had for Chapman. And look, why wouldn't they like Chapman? People don't choose their favorite players based on ethnicity, right? Yeah. And but the reason why we only give out Dominican cards in the Dominican, it's for two reasons. One is it is about celebrating your heritage. It is about honoring people from your hometown. Like, I'm from New Hampshire, and the next town over from me, Manchester, that's where Mike Flanagan was from. Mike Flanagan won the Cy Young in 1979 for the Orioles. And I save all my Mike Flanagan cards, and there's a history museum in New Hampshire, and I give all my cards to them, and they hand them out to kids, because it's kind of cool knowing that the Cy Young Award winner, there's actually 2 Cy Young Award winners from Manchester, New Hampshire. Chris Carpenter from the Cardinals also is from Manchester. So, and we're in a cold weather state. We don't have many ball players. So the fact that we have 2 Cy Young Award winners is just miraculous.
Someone's at my door. I've got to get that. Be right back.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group, or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Sports Card Nation has returned.
So back to the DR, the second reason why we don't share other cards, other players from other backgrounds, is logistics. Like, we don't have, it's so much money to for postage to send cards that we can only bring a small amount. And so it just makes sense to bring DR cards to the DR. And also, if you look, there's something special about celebrating your own country. I mean, look at the success of the World Baseball Classic, right? And Japan, Otani just said he was going to play for Japan. How cool is that? Maybe Ichiro will be a coach. I mean, I don't know, but the DR team is going to be insane. Like Vladdy Jr. at first base, Pena at shortstop, all these players. I mean, it's just. So that's why we focus on the DR players.
Yeah, and like you just elegantly pointed out, baseball is a worldwide sport. We'll take credit for sort of inventing the game, but it's become obviously a worldwide sport. And in the DR, like you said, it's almost it's like religion. Kids just sort of that's what they play. I was curious, to find out how they do follow their hometown players, but like you said, internet. I'm sure they have some sort of newsprint, TV games that what they can get. I also appreciate that you saying, hey, while they like their own players from their country, they like other players too. Like they have other favorite players. I'd love, going back to kind of where I was, a few minutes back, I'd love to see, Fanatics / Topps, Panini, maybe bring some boxes, right, of sealed product and have these kids get to open some packs, right? Anyone that's in this hobby knows one of the most fun you can have is opening a pack of cards, whether it's from a vintage box, whether it's a pack of 87 Topps or 2022 brand, right? It's that rush, that adrenaline, and these I'm sure most of these kids, if not all of them, probably haven't got to do that really, and love to see it's one thing to have, you're giving them the cards, and that's awesome what you're doing, but that'll kind of show them sort of, I guess that'll lead me into another question. Do the kids sort of ask, like, where did this come from? How do I get these? Are they inquisitive, or are they just so glad to have what you give them?
That's a great question. Because of the language barrier, I mean, Hugh and I, when we would be with the coach presenting to the team and explaining our passion for baseball cards and how we want to share them, we never really got into, mainly because of the language barrier and also because it didn't occur to us, we never really got into the issue of where did who manufactures these cards and, how popular are they? It was more about just saying, here's this neat thing that you may have never seen before. We'd love for you to share this. We'd love to share our joy of baseball cards with you, was really about it, rather than focusing on why they can't get them. But, hopefully when I learn some more Spanish, I'll be able to have deeper conversations.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, I'm going to beat this like a dead horse, but I think it's important. And I'm going to see what we can do. I can't obviously make any promises, but, maybe get some of these card manufacturers on board to donate some boxes. And these kids get to kind of see where cards come from, sort of the process. While now you have the cards, but where did they come from? Sort of the whole, genealogy of the hobby. And you never know, that can inspire somebody. Maybe someone opens a card store down there at some point. Do a lot of these players, Darren, I'm sure you're aware of this too. The companies will give them, count, 800 count box of their kind of base cards.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Oh. So,
I'm sure they give them to a lot of family and friends, but, they generally get, at least it used to be like that. I'm going to go on the assumption it still happens, but, even it'd be nice to maybe, if they could even coordinate something with the players where they can come back home and even distribute their own cards. And then these young kids can meet their heroes in person.
Yeah.
And they're giving them cards. They can sign them. Maybe they can sign them ahead of time and just hand them out that way. There's just so many directions, positive directions. Something like you're doing can go. There's so many tentacles to it. There's people can take up the baton and run with it too. And I think, that's I don't want to, speak for you, but in knowing what you're doing, that's sort of my vision for you, is that this thing can be even bigger. The fact that you two gentlemen are doing what you're doing is a blessing, and kudos to you guys. But this thing can turn into, from a ripple to a wave, with more people just kind of getting on board, from the card companies to even some of the Dominican players themselves. I don't know how often they come back to their home country, but I'd like to see that, I don't know if it happens or doesn't, but even some more, if it is going on, even more so. I just think that goes a long way to building community and those bonds and promoting the hobby, too, to a country that, like you said, in the top 5, poorest countries in the world. Give these kids some joy, they get that joy playing, but even joy off the field. And like you said, cards have a lot of stats on them, right? And it's a good way to learn, multiplication. How do I figure out how to figure out a batting average? If I add all these, this player's played 5 years, let me add up all his home runs. It could teach them addition. There's just so many different positive aspects to card. And I hope this thing gets bigger and better. And I'll reach out to a few people I know, get some feelers out there for you. It ain't gonna hurt, right? Free to do. So we'll see what we can do.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but Sports Card Nation will be right back after that.
Okay, everybody, have you heard about Collectible? It's the one-stop shop where any collector can buy and trade affordable shares on some of the world's most rare and valuable sports cards and memorabilia, starting from just $5. For a Mickey Mantle 1952, PSA 10s, Will Chamberlain's iconic rookie uniform, to 101 Patrick Mahomes RPAs, rare LeBron James logo mans, and everything in between. Collectible creates never-seen-before access and opportunities for all. Let's enjoy the hobby we love together. Please note this is not a recommendation or solicitation to buy any security. All investment decisions should be undertaken after doing your own research.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
So you mentioned is going there every year sort of what your plans will be going forward?
I would like to. It may not be sustainable for me to do that. But like you were saying, like it doesn't. There's many big things that could be done to scale this up, like the involvement of Major League Baseball or Topps. But there's many small things, small little ripples that can be done too. And I recently designed a poster, like a leaflet, that I would love to share with baseball card stores and baseball card shows that they can just put on their table and or hang in their shop and just let other collectors know that they can do this. Ultimately, I would love to become a contributor and keep sharing my cards and have some large organization, take this over. Especially, I'm surprised it hasn't been done already. It's not that unique of an idea. Along the same lines, John, I think that what Hugh and I have done shows that you don't need to really have a lot of money or be have a lot of influence or power to make an impact, right? Like you can, like if some of your listeners are going to the Dominican or to Venezuela or Cuba or any place like that, Puerto Rico, you can just bring the cards yourself and hand them out and find a community center or something and not have to think too much about it. I mean, it's really just about sharing your love for baseball and baseball cards.
Yeah, no doubt. Like you said, most collectors have more cards than they need. That's the fun part. Even to scale down your collection and of guys are from the Dominican. I appreciate your time coming on. What I want you to do is give out your information. I implore anyone that's listening to the podcast that wants to help out, in the very least, get them maybe your direction or Hugh's direction. Even if they can mail them cards themselves, save you on the postage. It'll be a tax write-off for them. Get those cards down to the DR where they can obviously be distributed. Like I said, I'm also going to try to do a few things of what I can, with my sort of contacts, if you will. But give out, where people can see what you're doing, check out what you're doing, and if they want to get involved, and I hope they do, where they can reach you.
Oh, sure. And you just reminded me of something. The most economically viable and efficient way to get baseball cards to the DR is to put them in your suitcase. Postage is crazy. It doubles the cost of anything that we try to send. And so I would love to connect with fellow collectors that may vacation down in the DR. I mean, look, winter's coming up. It's a huge, huge resort area for people that want to get away from the snow. There's tons of collectors who go down there. We know that. So I would love for some of them to connect with me and say, hey, Darren, we're going down to the DR. I'm happy to bring a box of 500 cards. So ideally, this would be for people in the North Coast that could connect with Hugh. But even if not, even if they're in other opposite parts of the country, they can hand out the cards themselves. And I'm happy to share what I have. So everything you need to know about how to donate, what to donate is on our website, which is CardsFortheDR, cards, FOR, thedr.wordpress.com. And you can put a link on your site too, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then in this episode, in the show notes, I'll make sure to get that info there as well.
Oh, and if you're on Instagram, you can also reach out to me at Baseball Cards for Good. That's Baseball Cards for Good. And those are the two main ways of reaching out. I mean, there's Twitter and Facebook and blah, 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 but I can't do everything. I can only be in one, really pay attention to one. So I pay attention to Instagram.
Yeah. What I'll have you do is give me the stuff that you want advertised, and I'll make sure that gets in the show notes. So for those listening, even though Darren just said it, and you missed it, or your memory memories like mine and you can't remember what you had for dinner the night before, so you ain't going to remember that, check out the show notes. That information will be there to maybe get some cards headed to the Dominican Republic. You know, it is obviously cheaper to deliver in person. Not everyone can go there. That's understandable. If you want to, hey, send them. I know postage is not cheap, but it's good for your soul, makes you feel good, and it is a charitable donation. So you write that off your taxes. Not that that's the only reason you're doing it, but that's a fringe benefit of doing it. If someone wants to mail them, you can also steer them in the right direction. As well. So, Darren, I appreciate you coming on. What you're doing with Hugh is great, and keep it up. And hopefully, this thing, you know, is going to get bigger each year here. And I'm going to do my part to try to aid in that effort. So keep going, continued, and again, you know, you're making an impact. You know, it's whether it's one kid, 30 kids, 100 kids, an impact's an impact, and so you're making a difference for some young people in a country that you know, not as rich as some other ones, and doesn't have a lot of that stuff you know, readily available, and those kids get to enjoy the hobby much like kids, you know, here in America and in other countries do, and that's a nice thing to know that's going on.
I really appreciate your support, John. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And again, it's Thanksgiving. I mean, you know, you can do things all year, but I think this is a great week to really highlight it. It makes a little more even sense that way. So thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
All right, great having Darren on. Great cause he is part of, and so I'm going to put all his contact and information, website, in the show notes of this episode. If you can help out and get some Dominican player cards, maybe you don't want them, maybe you just want to be a nice person, if you can get those for Cards for the DR, they'll go to the DR, Dominican Republic, and those young kids down there will enjoy them. Remember, there are no card stores, there are no stores selling packs of cards. There are, you know, it's a very poverty-stricken nation, and so obviously that's not a top priority, but for those kids, it brightens their day, makes them happy, and I mean, what more do I need to say, right? It's a great cause. It's a great, you know, you can do this any time of year, right? And you should, or it would be nice, but you know, holiday season, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas coming up, and you know, those little acts of kindness just create bigger ripples, bigger waves, and very important. So if you can help out that cause, much appreciated. Thanks, Darren, for what you do and what you're doing, and keep going. You're making a huge impact in the DR, in the hobby, and it's good to see.
That's a wrap on another edition of the Sports Card Nation podcast. Thank you to all the awesome listeners out there. Without you, there is no us. Thank you to all our great guests who drive this show, and also our wonderful sponsors who help us produce the great hobby content every week. Remember, another Hobby Quick Hits episode drops every Monday, and Sports Card Nation returns again next Friday. If you like the shows, we appreciate those positive reviews. Be well, and always remember, the hobby is the people.